Local 7 members apparently rejected a fact finder's report today, saying it'll cost each member thousands of dollars a year in lost income. 13 ABC's Bill Horman standing by live with the details on a vote that puts the Bell administration against Local 7. Bill?
Apparently so, Lee. The fact finder recognizes that Toledo needs to save money, so he crafted a deal to cut back on labor costs that apparently didn't go over very well with the union. But union members didn't like what they heard, so they made their opinions heard after learning what was in this contract recommendation. Was it a good deal?
Not to other people. No. They weren't very happy in there.
Some members walked out with homemade signs in preparation for a rally down at Government Center after the vote. The deal they rejected called for no pay raise in 2012 or 2013, a 15% contribution to their health care, and they will only get a 3% contribution from taxpayers to their pension, not 10%. This worker says no pay raise makes this a tough deal to swallow.
They could have been a little more fair in that respect. They could have offered us something in return to say, hey, you know, we're going to take something from you, but we'll help you offset that a little bit.
Several union members told us this deal alone will cost them $300 to $400 extra each month. But the fact finder's report indicates the city's financial situation requires cuts in labor costs. And he tried to strike a balance between union demands and city offers.
In some areas he compromised, and in some areas he went for either the city or the bargaining unit.
Over 80% of our budget are personnel costs, and we absolutely have to cut personnel costs.
Michael Craig, we need Michael Craig. Joe McNamara, we need him too.
Now the union's putting pressure on council, which could vote to approve this deal tomorrow. Then it's up to the Bell administration on whether to impose these concessions. Bill Horman, 13 ABC, Action News.
Yesterday, AFSCME Local 7 resoundingly rejected a fact finder report, and today the mayor moved to impose those concessions the union just rejected. Good evening, everyone. I'm Diane Larson.
And I'm Lee Conklin. 13 ABC's Bill Horman tonight says even though the fact finder deal is dead, the city still needs to make savings. Bill?
Yeah, that's why, Lee, the mayor has asked City Council to impose the concessions that were recommended on the fact finder report. Could save the city $2.5 million. He chose that route over two options. The first option is renegotiation. With yesterday's overwhelming rejection of the fact finder's recommendations, a new agreement could be reached if the two sides started talking again. The city's last and best offer asked for deep concessions from the union, but the mayor could use the slightly better terms from the fact finder as a new starting point. The union told me it is their intent to go to the mayor and see if they can go back to the bargaining table, but they also say the mayor's attitude is very important here. For instance, Mayor Bell could simply impose concessions, which he is now willing to do. By writing legislation council would have to approve, the mayor would force the union to give up what it just rejected. Yesterday, the mayor indicated the fact finder's report works for taxpayers.
As a person who has reviewed that fact finder's report, I'm comfortable with it, so I would have no reason to reject it.
But the anger felt by union members could backfire on the mayor, and that brings up an option for the union. A union strike. A spokesman for Local 7 told us today the union wants to do something to help the city save money, but he said the fact finder report takes too much, too soon, and cuts too deeply into members' pocketbooks, and that imposed concessions could force the union to respond by authorizing a 10-day strike notice. But Councilman and former union president Mike Collins says a strike seems unlikely.
In this financially difficult time, will members of the bargaining unit strike? I would think not.
The union insists a strike is a last resort, but they say it is also on the table. Now, we broke the news of the mayor's move to union leadership this afternoon, late this afternoon. They tell us they are very disappointed that the mayor does not want to go back to the bargaining table. They say this move is going to hurt the community and it's going to hurt members' pocketbooks. They claim it will cost each member $500 a month. Reporting live from union headquarters, Bill Horman, 13 ABC, Action News.
Rather, tomorrow, City Council is likely to vote on concessions on whether to impose concession, that is, on AFSCME Local 7. A fact finder recommended workers pay more for health care and pensions. But 13 ABC's Bill Horman reports that the union is calling on supporters to pressure City Council into voting against the concessions. Bill?
The unions are fighting those concessions through phone calls to supporters and with a strong show of union solidarity. 3 weeks ago, 83% of the voting members of Local 7 rejected the fact finder's recommendations. Local 7 asked the mayor to go back to the bargaining table. Instead, Mayor Bell sent council an ordinance asking members to impose those concessions on the union. And one day before the council votes, the union is organizing opposition.
Our message is simple. We want City Council to reject the mayor's ordinance.
And council is getting a lot of phone messages.
I do not feel that Mayor Bell is fair.
I would like for more talks to continue with Mayor Bell. I think he's being unfair.
You know, there is a lot of pressure being put on Councilman.
Mike Craig is one who's getting calls, and he's taking them seriously.
We want to provide a good living for, an honest living for our workers, but we also have to consider the needs of the city, and we need to keep the city running.
And in a show of solidarity, Local 7 now asking other unions to support them. The Farm Labor Organizing Committee is promising to bus in a couple hundred workers in time for tomorrow's council vote.
And from what people have indicated, there's going to be a lot of support tomorrow for us as we struggle to get a fair contract.
But Councilman Mike Collins has proposed an amendment to the mayor's ordinance that Collins believes is a more positive approach and could take the sting out of imposing concessions.
Well, I think the amendment would serve in the best interest of the administration and all of the bargaining units in the city of Toledo.
Now, Mayor Mike Bell is in China, so the Collins proposal may not be presented to him for a few more hours. Mike Collins really won't say what his change would be, but regardless, the unions are lining up behind Local 7, hoping to beat back an attempt at imposing concessions. Reporting live, Bill Horman, 13 ABC, Action News.
Toledo City Council shocked the Bell administration with its decision regarding contract concessions with Local 7. Tonight we have team coverage. 13 ABC's Christine Long outside One Government Center with Local 7 union supporters. But first we start with 13 ABC's Bill Horman. He's been on the story all day and joins us with the very latest. Bill?
Instead of imposing concessions on Local 7, late this afternoon, Toledo City Council decided to impose renegotiations on the Bell administration. This is a huge victory for the Local 7 union because in 3 letters they asked the Bell administration to go back to the bargaining table. I want to show you a video from a little bit more than an hour ago. City Council realized that right now it's just too premature to vote on this issue. So by an 11-0 vote, they said to the Bell administration, we want you to go back to the bargaining table.
Nobody said give them no money. To sit down and bargain with these people because you don't want to is a shame. And I say shame on you and shame on the mayor and shame on the administration.
Mr. Mayor, we have not reached impasse, and that please respect the human rights of all the members of our employee units in the city. Thank you.
Both sides need to sit down now and come to an agreement during the next 2 weeks.
Now, the Bell administration has insisted that they have already proposed their final and best offer. There's no need to renegotiate, they say. They tried to frame this in 3 arguments. 1, that the city faces an $18 million budget deficit, needs to make cuts next year. 2, that this is really between city services versus union perks. And then 3, the big gun, 130 layoffs coming if City Council does not approve concessions on Local 7. Today, City Council was not buying it, and they said both sides, get together. You've got 2 weeks to work this out. Reporting live from Government Center, Bill Horman, 13 ABC, Action News.
Thanks much. The Bell administration and Local 7 were pushed back to the bargaining table by City Council yesterday. But what happens if the 2 sides don't agree on a new deal? 13 ABC's Bill Horman says layoffs are a better bet than a strike. Bill.
Yeah, Diana, union strike might only make the case for Mayor Bell as he tries to enlist support for Issue 2. And layoffs are a threat, but there is time to work out a compromise. The unions who showed up to support Local 7 at City Council are watching what happens the next couple of weeks. Council sent a clear message it wants talks to resume.
Both sides need to sit down now and come to an agreement during the next 2 weeks.
The city faces an $18 million deficit next year, but the Bell administration is threatening layoffs soon if a deal with Local 7 cannot be worked out. Council members disagree about whether those layoffs are really necessary right now. This threat of 130 layoffs, is that a real possibility?
It's a real possibility because we have to have the money to pay them.
I don't know how they're going to lay off in November because that implies they need these concessions immediately. 2 weeks isn't going to make a difference.
But layoffs are still more of a threat than a union strike, which probably wouldn't sit well with voters since Issue 2's collective bargaining restrictions go on the ballot in just a couple of months.
We are prepared in the event of a strike. We have contingency plans in place. We will exercise those.
So the two sides will go back to the bargaining table, and a strike and layoffs off the table for now, but the pressure may be on the union. We'll have more on that angle tonight at 6. Reporting live, Bill Horman, 13 ABC Action News.
Toledo City Council forcing Mayor Mike Bell and the Local 7 union back to the bargaining table. Two sides need to reach a deal on a new contract. 13 ABC's Bill Horman says that puts a lot of pressure on one side in particular, huh, Bill?
Yeah, Lee, Council seemed to side with the union yesterday when it urged the Bell administration to get back to the bargaining table, but now the pressure may be on the union.
Motion carried.
Local 7 and its supporters got exactly what they wanted. Time to work out a better deal, and Council seemed to take Local 7's side.
And I say shame on you and shame on the mayor and shame on the administration.
One of the unfortunate things that we have between labor and management is this level of distrust.
Today, the Bell administration said the mayor was not surprised by the council's vote to go back to the bargaining table, and Deputy Mayor Steve Hurwat told me the administration is now talking with the union. Ironically, by getting the renegotiation they wanted, the pressure may now be on the union. They may have to come back with some sort of concessions to prove that council didn't make a mistake when it delayed its vote. After all, Local 7 wanted to renegotiate, and Council gave them that chance.
I think it's important that they step up to the plate and say, this is what we meant by that, and here's what we're willing to offer further.
In a spirit of cooperation with the mayor, the union did not want to go on camera, but told us today both sides have to be willing to move off their positions for the common good. That indicates the union's willingness to avoid 130 layoffs by agreeing to some sort of concessions. Toledo faces an $18 million deficit next year, and the union says it understands that financial strain. That's why, by getting what it wants, the union now faces the pressure to work out a deal.
You asked for 2 weeks, you've got your 2 weeks, use it productively.
And the other 4 unions that have new contract negotiations with the city know what happens over the next 2 weeks will be a framework for what happens with their negotiations. Bill Horman, 13 ABC Action News.
Toledo City Council did something rather unusual today, voting for a tentative contract before a local union got to vote. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I'm Lee Conklin.
And I'm Diane Larson. 13 ABC's Bill Horman says Council figured it had to vote today. Bill?
Yeah, Council gave the Bell administration and Local 7 2 weeks to hammer out a new deal, and the two sides did reach a tentative agreement. Today, City Council approved the deal because it said it would, even though the union won't vote until tomorrow. Since union votes didn't match the registration numbers last week, Local 7 has to hold another vote Wednesday on this new tentative deal it just reached with the city. Broadly, it offers pay freezes for the next 2 years, requires workers pay 15 to 20% more in health care premiums, pay 7% toward their pension, that's up from 0, but union members will also get $750 checks each year for the next 3 years. Mayor Mike Bell preferred the terms of the more favorable Fact Finders report, which the union overwhelmingly rejected. But the mayor renegotiated as council had asked.
I understand, too, that, in negotiations you have to be fair and you have to try to show some movement, and we did that.
Yes.
Today, City Council unanimously approved this tentative deal that's expected to save the city $3 million.
They performed exactly to the extent we wanted to, and I think we did the right thing today by affirming the fruits of their work.
Councilman Phil Copeland preferred letting the union vote first, but went with the rest of council anyway.
I thought it was the best thing to do, and I still think it was the best thing to do, but they could have did it the next day.
Now the question becomes, will Local 7 members approve this deal during their revote tomorrow? And that is an important question because the Bell administration thinks the fact finders' recommendations save taxpayers more money. If the union rejects this new deal, though, the mayor says he'll let council decide which deal it might be asked to impose on the union. Reporting live, Bill Horman, 13 ABC Action News.